let's go ahead and dive right into this little debate in the not really debate, excuse me, I'm using the wrong words. Let's dive into the first game, the second game of this series, which is game 2 against Denver. And they were at Denver, the Timberwolves, and surprisingly enough, the Timberwolves they shockingly were able to steal both of the home games from Denver when I didn't even think they were going to win game 1 to start out the series, just based off of how reluctant Denver really is, and based off of how every single time Denver seemed to have this lead over the Lakers in the postseason, they were able to compose themselves and then they were able to come back. Obviously, this is a completely different team than the Lakers, and one thing that definitely sets this team apart is their defense. Like, that's the biggest difference from the Timberwolves from playing the Timberwolves to playing the Lakers. Like, the Timberwolves, their defense was ranked number 1 throughout the entirety of the season, and excuse me. Because of that, like, obviously their team is just going to be a lot more difficult to score on, especially with all of the big men that they have in their rotation, so that way they have enough matchups to be able to guard to be able to guard Nikola Jokic. And what really surprised me in this game was how their defense was still this strong despite having Rudy Gobert, who is their best defender. And the final score, it was 106-80, so this is a blowout win for the Timberwolves. This was the lowest scoring game that the Nuggets have played throughout the entirety of this season. And the Timberwolves, on their end, they were able to do that without even having Rudy Gobert. Rudy Gobert, he decided to take the game off because his son was being born. And obviously, like, if your son is being born, it makes sense that you'd want to be there because you'd want to be a good father. That just makes total sense. However, Gilbert Arenas, he had some things to say about that. And he commented how the kid is going to be there by the time he got back from the game. That is a very egregious comment from Gilbert Arenas, I will say, because I don't think Gilbert Arenas is a good dad, honestly. If that's his logic, that the baby will be there after the game, that is a terrible logic to have as a father. As a player, obviously, it's completely different, but as a father, there comes a point where things are bigger than basketball, and I genuinely don't think he understands that. And, he says that, like, one thing that I find kind of ironic is he says that the child will be there when he gets back, but why did he but then there was, if that's his logic, that the child is going to be there when he gets back, why did he have to bring a gun into the locker room? The gun's going to be back home. The gun's going to be at home when he gets back. Why did he have to bring it to the locker room? I'm just throwing that out there. But regardless, this Timberwolves team is way better than what I thought they would be in the postseason. And it's all thanks to, this game specifically is all thanks to Anthony Edwards and Karl Anthony Towns in terms of the offensive side. But the team played very, very great on the defensive side, and it flustered Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray. And because those two were flustered, their offense had a much more difficult time rolling. And this is what I was talking about with teams having defenses and sort of being able to impact their team in different ways as opposed to just scoring. Like, I mentioned how the Timberwolves, they have just scoring and they don't have the defense. This is what happens when a team has both scoring and defense. Like, the Timberwolves, they scored 106 in this game, and they scored 106 in the previous game as well. However, they've had their defenses to be able to slow down the other team so that way, because 106, like, that's a lot. That's obviously, like, that's a lot of points, but in today's NBA, that's not really, like, the expected final score. It's usually around 115 or, like, 120 that I think that the scoring is the scoring is really potent. And it was a bit of a I wouldn't say it was a bit of a slow-paced game, but it was a bit of a low offensive producing game, because when you look at the box scores on this game right here, the Timberwolves, Anthony Edwards ended the game with 27 and 7, which was obviously fantastic. Karl-Anthony Towns ended with 27 and 12, which is also fantastic, and he shot 10 for 15 from the field as well. Anthony Edwards shot 11 for 17 from the field, very, very impressive. And however, the rest of the team did not really do that much or didn't really provide as much in terms of scoring. So, except for Alexander Walker, who ended the game with 14 points. Naz Reid ended the game with 14 as well, but he was 5 for 14 from the field. And a lot of people on the Timberwolves, some of them shot inefficiently. What really kept them afloat was Anthony Edwards and Karl-Anthony Towns' efficiency. They were able to shoot 50% from the field as a team and 39% from the three-point line, which was far better than what the Nuggets were able to do offensively. And their defense, they completely stopped Jokic and Jamal in this game. I mean, Aaron Gordon ended the game with 20 points, but Jokic ended the game with 16 points, 16 rebounds, and 6 assists. That is a very lackluster performance coming in from Jokic, especially when Rudy Gobert isn't in the rotation. And then Jamal Murray, he ended the game with only 8 points and shot 3 for 18 from the field. Michael Porter Jr., 9 points, 4 for 12 from the field. And it's just all of these. And also Reggie Jackson, 1 for 6 from the field. It was really bad shooting from the Denver Nuggets because of the defense that the Timberwolves were playing on them. And that's really the biggest difference maker, just the fact that they have that defense. And usually the team that has the best defense in these playoffs ends up being the team that wins out in the end. So the Timberwolves, they have a really good shot right here. Now, the fact that they beat the Denver Nuggets at home 2 times in a row, that's just even more reason as to why they definitely have a shot. Because I've said several times that I think there's no other team in the league that could compete against the Denver Nuggets, and here we are with the Timberwolves taking advantage of the matchups that they have in this series. And if they can stop Jokic and Jamal, then being able to stop Shai and Chet should also be something that they're capable of. Because I personally think Jokic is a very, very good center, and then I think Chet is a decent center. He's a decent center. Shai Gilgeous is a very, very, very great point guard, and Jamal Murray is an extremely underrated point guard. So the point guard center matchup between Shai, Chet, and Jamal Jokic, it's sort of, I wouldn't want to say similar because their play styles are rather different and the number one option is also different, but stopping the both of them is also just as important. And the fact that the Timberwolves have good center rotations to be able to slow down Chet, because Chet is really, really tall, that's going to help them that's going to help them, as well as the fact that they were able to stop Jamal Murray around the perimeter. So if they're able to stop Jamal Murray around the perimeter, they could also, in theory, try and figure out a way to slow down Shai around the perimeter or around the mid-range game where he loves to operate. And those are sort of the things that we have to see going into the series. Obviously, I'm not going to say that this series is over, because normally it would sound like it's over. I mean, the Timberwolves, they just stole 2 games from Denver, and now they're going home to play 2 games in Minnesota, where they have a chance to in home court where they have a chance to sweep. And I don't think that this series is going to be over, because this Nuggets team is a formidable team, and they should be able to. Why did the lights just go out? Jeez, why does that always happen? But regardless, they should be able to come up with a game plan to be able to win out at least one game in the road trip going to Minnesota. And since that team is a rather good team, I think that they have a chance to make this series competitive still. And about the game itself, I mean, it was really never close throughout the entirety. And it's like the game seemed over right when the first half ended. And it really didn't seem like the Nuggets were really trying to do something to get back into the game. And it was really surprising seeing the Denver Nuggets lose this badly in the postseason to a team, especially to a team that's so young and rather inexperienced, and behind a franchise that is known for having rather bad luck in the postseason. And I mean, the reality of it is that both of these teams are really, really good, and we shouldn't count either of these teams out until the final game. And that's basically all I really had to say about this game. I mean, there's not really much that needs to be talked about other than the fact that they're going into Minnesota and they're expected to win out. They're expected to win it all, even though, I feel like I feel like the Denver Nuggets are going to make it a little bit more challenging for them with this sort of much longer break. But we are out of time for this first segment. So now I will go into the second segment where I talk about Jalen Brunson and the New York Knicks beating the Indiana Pacers at home in Game 1 to start out the series. So I will be right back after this short break.